All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today for our webinar for the next hour, redesigning the chart of accounts in church windows accounting. Let's go ahead and get started on our topic. So the topic that the webinar was scheduled for was called accounting, redesigning the chart of accounts. And as I construct a lot or build a lot of these webinars, and the questions that I ask myself frequently are sort of the guiding factor, or the guide that leads me to the answering of or to the structure of the webinar itself. And one of the first questions that I ask myself is, the one, you're dealing with a chart of accounts that's already in place. That's really the situation we're talking about, redesigning the chart of accounts. So what that's implying to us is we have a chart of accounts that isn't currently working for us, okay? And so that, when I'm asking myself, what are the reasons why folks or churches would want to redesign their chart of accounts? And it's a pretty broad question. There's any number of reasons why a church might want to redesign or restructure their chart of accounts. Probably the most important and most common reason, and I deal with a lot of these every day, every week, every month, every year, is simply the church or the user is not getting the desired reports. The reports that they're wanting, the chart of accounts simply isn't providing the information that they're wanting. Okay. Well, again, that's pretty broad. All right, so we'll come back to that in a minute. Another reason why a church or a user may want to change the chart of accounts is maybe it was set up incorrectly. So if we go launch into our accounting, sort of it does tie back into not getting desired reports. But again, more specifically, what I'm talking about is when we open up our manage accounts here in accounting and we look at our chart of accounts. I'm going to introduce my highlighter friend here. One of the things that we can never ever let go of with regards to church windows accounting is it is a fund accounting system. Okay, and why this is important is because as a technician or a trainer who works with a lot of charts of accounts, a lot of accounting users, a lot of times I will see a church or a user that will set up assets as funds. Okay, assets in church windows represent the accounts we own. And so they're bank accounts, savings accounts, investment accounts, fixed assets many times, accounts receivable in this case if you have own the accounts receivable module or the add-on for that. So again, things we own as opposed to fund balances, which if we steer our focus down here, let me draw my little arrow down there. Hopefully everybody can see that. We have fund balances, okay? And folks who struggle with understanding how fund accounting may be similar or different from other traditional accounting systems, frequently will struggle with funds versus assets. Okay, what is a fund? And so initially a user or a church will set it up and they'll set up their assets, defining them as essentially what would normally be funds down here. So in as shorthanded a way or as a short a way as I can possibly sort of describe that is we want to take these accounts that are incorrectly set up as assets and move them down to these accounts here called funds. So again, that would be another reason why a church may want to redesign or restructure their chart of accounts. Okay. Also, the other reason why maybe a church might want to change their account number or accounts is their account numbers are too long, okay, or too short, as the case may be. Okay, we've got, notice here, a 6-digit account definition here on the left, 1 digit, point, 2 digits, point, 3 digits. Well, again, if the chart of accounts is set up with an account definition that's either too long or too short, we want to change that. We want to reconstruct it. We want to redesign our chart of accounts to get more of a reporting or accounting number or accounting system or account number system that suits what our reporting needs are. Okay, so again, that's, I kind of thought about this all day and I was thinking, well, are there more? Well, I'm sure there probably are, but those are probably 3 of the most common reasons why a church would want to change their chart of accounts or redesign it or restructure, as the case may be. Now, with that being said, a lot of times, the other thing that I always like to mention about this too is that we look at your chart of accounts differently than you do. And what I mean by that is, you're immersed in your chart of accounts every day. So at some point, it really, and I'm saying this from personal experiences, users get to a point where they are no longer objectively looking at their chart of accounts. It becomes subjective to them. They're so closely related to it and involved that they almost like have a personal relationship with it, and they have a hard time seeing beyond what they're thinking in their head about it. Okay, and what that means is that you've lost your objectivity about it, and really all you see is the bad, not the good. Okay, and why this is important is because your thinking in your mind, or users' thinking frequently is, well, I've been looking at this for so long and we just can't ever get it to the way that we want it to be, so let's just start all over again. Okay, let's just enter a brand new chart of accounts. Well, great, that's a really logical place in your thinking to go, okay, to take you. But is it really necessary? That's always the thing that we always want to ask, is it's a really strong knee-jerk response to a situation that may or may not be warranted, okay? And so that's why when I talk about it and folks call me and they're frustrated about it and they're like, oh, well, I've been looking at it and we need to redo entirely our chart of accounts. And the first question I always ask is, and many of our technicians who deal with accounting do, and they say, what isn't working? So now we're starting to sort of steer our focus over to not getting the desired reports that you want, okay? We really have to deal with specifics here in terms of what isn't working. Well, my treasurer's report isn't giving me what I want. Okay, great. Well, that affects a certain type of an account in Church Windows. Income and expenses primarily, okay? Fours and fives essentially, all right? Or my balance sheet isn't working. Okay, well, those are different types of accounts. But we're starting to get into the nuts and bolts of what isn't working on your chart of accounts. I guess what I'm really driving at about all of this is to try to sort of steer you back to an objective viewpoint of looking at your chart of account as simply a tool that you use. I try to help you move away from that frequently because, basically the path of least resistance, okay? That's really the way I use that term on my support calls a lot is in terms of refixing what's broken, essentially, do we have to really start over with an entirely new chart of accounts, or can we fix what's already there and not working for us, okay? And that's really what I try to do essentially, and that's what we're ultimately going to try to show you are some of the steps throughout this class or this webinar today to some of the other options before we ultimately get to that really, really, really strong choice of going, okay, let's just start or cut our losses, let's zap everything out at this change of year or start over and completely restructure our chart of accounts. Okay, so a few tools that we have built into the software that are going to help us with this is, well, certainly, of course, your reports. If we're looking at things like our reports and our treasurer's report or our balance sheet here in the upper left corner, those are really great reports. They show amounts and balances. But frequently, if it's going to come down to ultimately a question of what isn't or isn't working, one of the first things we're going to suggest you do is to go up to reports here, worksheets, right here at the very top. Everybody should see this menu popping up here now, and print the entire list chart of accounts. So here we are at our list of chart of accounts options. I'm going to suggest, checking including accounts with zero balances. That's going to bring in all of our accounts in the chart of accounts, those with activity and those without. Step one. Current year is fine for 2014. That's when we're wanting to try to change it if necessary, or at least look at it. And then I'm going to click over under my columns tab. And over here, I've taken basically away all of my amount columns. So under our, available columns on the left, I see current month or year to date. Many of you may come in here and see, okay, I've got my current month and year to date. We simply highlight those, click the left facing arrow, and now we're down to just account number, account name, and fund. And fund is important with regards to our income and expenses and funds, and we're going to see that here in just a moment, okay? So now when we click on print on the report, it's going to reveal our entire chart of accounts, starting with our assets at the very top, the accounts we own, okay, right up here, and then we eventually move into our liability accounts right here, and then eventually as we scroll down the page into our fund balances and our income and our expenses. Let me get rid of my drawing tools here. So liabilities, long-term liabilities, fund balances, and ultimately then into our income and our expenses. But notice there are no balances here whatsoever. This is just the basic structure for the chart of accounts. every account that we have in the chart of accounts, activity or no activity, okay? And once we get down to our funds, notice that here we've got this column here. Let me get to a page here, right here. This column called fund, right here. All right, so assets and liabilities never have anything in that field. Okay, so our one accounts and our two accounts and liabilities don't ever have anything there. But as you know, so if I scroll up, there's nothing there. Scroll down, but eventually when I get to my fund balances, every single account, 3s, 4s, and 5s, has to have a fund listed there. Okay, and they should. If they don't in accounting, then we've got a problem and you need to definitely call technical support, okay? There's something that isn't linked right, or we're not looking at it, or the system isn't seeing it correctly, and we need to hear from you to see if we can't figure out why it's broken, okay? But it is important, again, in your thinking and understanding and further comprehension of fund accounting to understand that every fund, every income, and every expense account, 3, 4, and 5 account, if you're not using account numbers, bear with us. We're just, you won't be dealing with that, but just bear with us while we work through it. But every fund balance, income, and expense account must be linked to a fund. Okay, it's that simple. I mean, the accounting requires it. But start here. And what I recommend frequently, or we will recommend, is once you have this chart of accounts printed out, okay, grab like 2 or 3 different colored markers. Maybe red for accounts you want to get rid of, green for those that you want to keep, and then yellow maybe for those that you're unsure about. And simply put the appropriate colored line or marker type on each one of the accounts based on whether it's a keeper, whether it's a deleter, or whether you're unsure about it. Okay, so frequently that can help us to figure out what accounts we're wanting to keep and which ones we're not. Okay, so again, take advantage of what the software has to offer. I mean, granted, it doesn't include any markers for you, but at least we can provide the basic full structure of the chart of accounts for you as it's constructed right now, without balances. Balances, give us like information that we need to interpret. We are not interested in interpreting necessarily the information here. We just want to look at the basic structure for the chart of accounts. Okay. Once you've gotten the chart of accounts printed out, again, maybe or crossing out the accounts you don't want, putting stars next to those that you want to keep, and then question marks next to those that you do. There's multiple ways that you can go ahead and determine this. You can just set up your own way of dealing with that, or how you decide which ones you want. But once we've decided, based on this list chart of accounts, which ones we want to keep and which ones we don't, then we have somewhere that we can then go in terms of either working with what we currently have, or if ultimately necessary, reconstructing and entering an entirely brand new chart of accounts again. Okay, and that's going to be the very, very last thing I talk about, because there's so many other options that we have in terms of trying to be able to, again, path of least resistance. Okay, trying to be able to get the problems resolved with what we currently have with as little work as necessary. Okay. I mean, the chart of accounts, entering it is not that terribly difficult of a process, but it still requires a fair amount of work. If you delete and zap out the entire chart of accounts and you have to re-enter it, you've got to reconstruct all of your subtotals again. There's work to be associated with. We got beginning balances to enter. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily an easy task if we're going to start over with a entirely clean slate to start a year per se. Okay, so again, trying to fix what's not working in what we currently have may be the better and faster choice. Okay. So once you've got the list chart of accounts, again, then we can look at things like maybe deleting unwanted accounts. Okay, which really is a very simple process in Church Windows for the most part. If you've got your report here and you're looking at it and you go, okay, I've got my accounts crossed out that I don't want to keep. Deleting accounts occurs when you go up to, at least the en masse method of doing that is, well, of course, we would recommend strongly, of course, making a backup of your data. We say 3 things about backing up your data in Church Windows, and that's backup, backup, and backup again. Can never have too many backups, okay? But then once you do have your backup, then you would go to Manage Accounts at the top left, Accounts plus minus. This is simply one option for doing this. This is the quick way, the en masse method. And we go up here to say maybe expenses. and it does require that we choose a fund here. Let me maximize that screen so we get more of a broader picture here. But simply down the left side here, here's our general operating fund that we've chosen. You may need to check multiple funds depending on the accounts you want to remove. And then down here, expense accounts for general operating fund, and notice there's a column here labeled delete. All right, so simply we can then, any of those that have NA, there's a reason why I can't delete them, and it could be because there are sub-accounts. It could be because there's current year activity. So right here, these things for like, church portion of Medicare FICA, insurance, those are NA because there are no sub-accounts. But that's the reason why, is we have activity in those. The other accounts for like minister's salary and benefits where there are sub-ledgers, the reason why I'm not able to delete those is probably because I need to get rid of the sub-accounts first if I want to get rid of those, okay? But basically any account that permits you to check the box under delete will allow you to delete the account. So simply we can go down the list, check the boxes, and then down here in the lower left corner, simply click the delete button or delete selected accounts, okay? It'll pop up and say, are you sure you want to delete the, such and such account? And you'll have to click OK or yes on each of them. But then basically it'll just zap those out of the chart of accounts. The system will not permit you to delete accounts that it simply can't or shouldn't. It will always protect the audit trail. So if there's a beginning balance on an account or current year activity or both, it won't let you delete it. And if for some reason you delete an account that you shouldn't have, and it's still permitted you to, it's no bother, no harm. You just re-add the account back to the chart of accounts, okay? So again, I'm not going to spend too much time under deleting accounts because again, the system protects you in many ways. Funds are different in that respect because we are dealing with income and expenses. So if I go up to funds here at the top, let me get rid of my drawing tools again here, or drawings. So here, general operating, all of these other accounts, again, none of the delete is available on the left side because I have to deal with the income and expenses that are linked to those funds and maybe any balances that I have in the fund, okay? So funds are a little bit different, okay? So again, deleting accounts is another way of considering or cleaning up your chart of accounts, okay? Or redesigning or restructuring it. Deleting unwanted accounts that you don't need, adding ones that you do, okay? I know it seems simplistic, but it's, again, when you're not objectively looking at the problem or what you've got going on, those simplest type of thing that we're looking at is often overlooked. So sometimes deleting and re-adding is the best way to go, okay? Is the easiest way to get what we need or want out of it. And the same is true for any of the other account types. If I go up to income accounts, again, I choose the fund that I'm wanting, down here, and then here's my income and expenses linked to mission. There's only a couple. You just check the box, click the delete button or delete selected accounts, and boom, the account is gone. Okay? Deleting, re-adding is also very similar as well. So sometimes maybe adding accounts is done, and then again, we can do this add accounts here just as easily. Okay, by using this again, it's back under manage accounts. It's in the upper left. Notice it says accounts plus minus, add or delete, as the case may be. Okay. The other one and the other step that we always would talk about, or that we want to talk about with regards to restructuring the chart of accounts, and again, this is one that we get a lot of support calls on, is relinking accounts. And what this is because our funds are affected through the income and expenses that are linked to it. An example of that is something like, say, our fund activity report, okay? So if you're not using this report, this is a really powerful report. So if I say go to my funds tab here and they're all selected, that's fine. And if I go to print, here is our general operating fund at the very top. Get my highlighter here. So current activity meaning month, year to date is year, a year to date, beginning of the year. So beginning balance is, in this case, the beginning of the month. Year to date activity is the start of the year. Then it shows all of our income and expense accounts, income accounts that are linked to the general fund. Then it moves into our expense accounts. And then ultimately it moves into or posts our transactions, which are our debit and credit journal entries or transfers, okay? Down right here. There's a lot. Our general fund has a lot of income and a lot of expenses. So does it make sense? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find that. There it is. General fund income, general fund expense. And then ultimately, here it is. Down here at the bottom, total expenses for general fund, ending fund balance. There would be another section right here in the middle that would say, or right below expenses labeled debit or credit, journal entries or transfers. So if you had activity where the fund was, affected through direct transfers or journal entries, those are accounted for in our fund activity report too. But what this is a demonstration of is, again, how important the linking is of our income and expenses to our funds. And again, as a technician who deals with this every day, one of the most common things support calls I deal with, probably one of the top 3 or 5, is, hey, I've got an income or an expense account that's linked to an incorrect fund. Or maybe I've got my income flowing into Fund A and my expense is posting out of or expensing out of Fund B. So there's a disconnect there, okay? And so the easy way to fix that or deal with that problem is to relink or change the linking of the respective income or expense account over to the correct fund. Okay. Again, path of least resistance. Redesigning, restructuring the chart of accounts, all sort of relates to one another. And this is the only place that what I'm about to show you can occur. Okay. So whenever you want to relink or change the linking of income and our expense accounts, we have to go to Manage Accounts here in the center, or Manage Accounts and View in the top left to open our Chart of Accounts window right here, or up here under Manage Accounts and View. I've gotten better at drawing with my mouse, but still it's not perfect. And then when we click on the Manage Accounts, it opens up our Chart of Accounts. So as we scroll down and we look at our, say, income accounts here, let's say I've got my handbell income. So here I click on that. We notice over here on the right, let me steer some focus here again with my drawing tool, right here on the right on the Detail tab, about halfway down, the menu called Fund. Okay, so here in this menu, I can change the linking of this particular income account. So any current year activity or future activity for this income account is then flowing into whatever fund I choose to link it to. Is there activity actually in this account? No. Let's find an account where there is. Flower income. There we go. There's a good example. Okay. So right now it's currently linking into the general operating fund. So let's say I want to change my linking so my flower fund goes into, say, my building fund, for example. If this balance here, beginning balance, income and expenses never have a beginning balance, of course. This will not affect prior years, only the current year. And the same is true for expenses, as the case may be. But notice here I've got $190 worth of income that came into Flowers in January. And right now that money was credited to my general operating fund. Okay, so I can just click that drop down arrow here and I can say, okay, I want my flower funds, my Finance Committee has deemed that the flower income should really be flowing into my building fund. It's a building fund expense, not general operating. I'm just saying that. But I just choose building fund. And there it is. I've just changed that flow of money, and I've also taken that $190 out of my general operating fund and moved it over to my building fund. Okay. So if I go up to my search here and I do flowers and I say choose my expense account, again, I would probably want to do the same thing here. So I've got my expense over here on the right. Do I have any balance for my flowers? Nope, doesn't look like I've spent any money out of that this year yet. So then, but I would still, in anticipation of expenses, I would simply click here and go, okay, my building fund for my flowers expense, and there we go. Any money that I expense for flowers in future now will be charged to or debited from the building fund and not my general operating fund. Okay, it's so common. We've got income flowing into account or Fund A, and we've got expense linked to Fund B. There are, again, other ways of dealing with those movings of those monies if necessary. But one of the easiest ones that users frequently overlook is just simply correct the linking of the income or an expense to the correct fund. Okay? It is literally that easy. And this is the only place in Church Windows accounting where you can, after the fact, relink or change the linking of your income or your expense accounts. Okay? Right here again on the Detail tab, halfway down in the menu called Fund, just choose the fund. And guess what? If you realize at some point, a couple months down the road that you linked it to the wrong fund, you can just come right in here and link it back to the original fund if you want. It'll just, again, shift the current year's activity only back to the start of the year and will not affect prior years. So I know that, I mean, for some of you that are aware of all of this, just bear with us. Again, it's all part of the, at least as far as I'm concerned, it's all part of the way of trying to be able to get the chart of accounts to do what we're wanting it to do. So relinking income and expenses, deleting accounts, adding accounts. One of the ones that folks are frequently overlooking is, I've had a general missions fund for many years, and now my finance committee or board has deemed that we want to set up a separate fund for each one of those, say, mission projects per se. So again, we would simply go up to accounts plus minus. Let's close out of our chart of accounts. Accounts plus minus, funds. Here I can just call it, again, it would be probably very specific with regards to the mission or the project overall in terms of my fund names. This again, more than likely, if I don't have income and expense accounts for these separate mission projects, I would probably need to go in and enhance my or add to my income and expense accounts too. For each one of these funds. We have to have a means of putting money into a fund through income, and we have to have a means of spending money out of funds generally through expenses. Not always, but in 99% of the time, those accounts are critical for the successful structure and setup and use of funds, as the case may be. Let's go ahead. I'm going to try to see if I can add one here. Let's call this one Haiti Mission Trip or Mission Fund. So here we go, Haiti Mission Fund balance. Notice I just typed in the name, left the word balance in there. It's now prompting me to enter a 3 number. Funds always start with number 3. So my current mission fund is 33100. Where I see that is my current list of funds down here under existing funds, and this one called mission. So again, in the interest of keeping maybe with those account numbers in the 330 range, maybe I can just go ahead and maybe make this 330, how about 110? And click Add Account. And I can go ahead and add another mission fund if I want and continue to add more funds as needed. But as soon as I'm done adding the funds, maybe I need to go up to my income account here, and notice it automatically defaults to my new Haiti Mission Fund, and I can call this Haiti Mission Income, Mission Fund Income. I'm not known for my typing skills, I'll admit. And then when we tab down again, maybe I can label this one 30, 110, add account. Oh, it's already in use. So see what I mean? There you go. The system has built-in fail-safes for us that allows us to not enter the same information twice, certainly with regards to account number or account name. So let's try maybe making it, how about 120, and then adding account. There we go. So then I just go up to expenses, again choosing my Haiti Mission Fund, and I'll call this one Haiti Mission Fund Expense. Oh, it's in use there too. How about 120 again? Interesting. There we go. So it's already, there we go. And we've now set up this new fund. So here, notice on the left-hand side, you can disregard the red dots because I clicked happy clicker twice there. But notice here on the far right side, I've got my new mission fund here, Haiti Mission Fund, with an income and an expense account. This fund is now properly structured and set up. I can take a balance now from, say, my current 330-100 mission fund that may have been designated for Haiti relief here, and transfer it from my general missions fund over to the new Haiti Mission Fund as of January 1, 2014, or today, or whenever I want. But I now have that separate fund that gives me more flexibility with regards to my reporting. Okay, so there's lots of options and lots of flexibility here. All right, another option that we have to consider when dealing with the reworking or structuring or redesigning of the chart of accounts is, when we go back to our chart of accounts, is to simply edit the name or the number, as the case may be. Again, reworking what we currently have. Again, one of the ways that we can do that here is if we go down to, let's do our Haiti accounts here. So notice here we've got them, all three of the accounts here. Fund balance, income, or expense. So if I choose, say, my Haiti Mission Fund income, it highlights that account here in the top left. If I click over under my tree view, this is, again, to me, one of the most underutilized features in the accounting software is if I just right click on the right now over the account labeled Haiti Mission Fund income, notice here I've got both delete and edit. Delete's only here because there's no activity. But if I open up my Haiti Mission Fund income, if I click on that, it opens up and says, okay, do you want to change the name or the number? All right, I don't have to go to my change account number structure screen in order to edit just a couple or a handful of accounts. Okay, the accounts are, if you've just got a few accounts that you want to change, maybe just changing and editing them what they have is going to be a better choice for you. Okay, I can do that even with accounts with activity. Deleting it is not the same as changing it. Okay. So if I say find this is true about virtually everything, but if I go down, I know I've got something in my utilities expenses here. So if I highlight, say, telephone, go over to the right under my telephone expense, right click on it and choose edit, it opens up and allows me to edit the name or the number. Same is true if I go to funds. Changing is not deleting. Highlight building fund, right click on it on the tree view, click edit. Here it opens up and gives us the option to edit both the fund name and the account name as well as the account number. Lots and lots of flexibility. Nothing says you have to delete the chart of accounts and start over again in order to get what you're wanting out of the system. Okay, again, I'm going to do this if I've got just a few or a handful, maybe even a couple of dozen accounts if I want to edit them. Okay, as long as I know that the system supports the new names or numbers that I'm wanting. The chart of accounts for Church Windows will never accept two accounts in the same account type with the same name. It will put like a number 2 after it if you try to do that. Okay, but a lot of users are simply unaware that here at the chart of accounts, you can just find an account, highlight it, go over to the tree view tab on the right side. Once it's highlighted, simply right click on it, choose edit, and it opens up and allows you to edit the name or the number right there. Don't have to go anyplace else to do that. Very quick, simple, and easy. And it'll tell you if you're trying to change it to a number that's already in use. So if I go, okay, my medical insurance employer church share, if I try to change it to something like 350, and I try to click OK, it should flash up here with a red dot. What it's telling me is that number is already in use. So here it says, notice my floating help message over that says the account number entered is already in use. Oh, okay, great. Thank you, system, for telling me that. So I now can go, okay, how about 10348? And if I click OK, there it is. It just changed that number for me. Didn't have to go any place else in order to edit it or change the number. Okay. All right. I love showing folks this system because frequently there are other ways to do what we're wanting before we ultimately get to that really, bold step of going, okay, we want to change over and we want to restructure the entire chart of accounts from top to bottom. And even then, there are ways of doing it with what you currently have. And I'm going to show you that here in just a couple minutes. All right. The other step is to set up a brand new chart of accounts. Okay. Where that occurs, the only way really to do that at this point is, especially if you're wanting to retain what you currently have in the system, good or bad, essentially drawing a line in time. Here's our old year, December 31st or whatever the change of your fiscal year period is, and we're going to start the new year by entering a brand new chart of accounts. Well, that again is done when we're at the change of year. So where we do that, again, strongly recommended you make a backup of your data, just in case, as it is now. Before you do this, go to Special Functions, Manage Years, Set Up New Accounting Year, and again, here it is, February 21st of 2014. You can do this anytime you want, really, pretty much. Meaning if you don't have your balances finalized from the previous year, it won't let you do it, or from the current year. But as long as you've got beginning balances are finalized, you can go in and set up your new year for 2015 now if you want. So if we go set up new accounting year, so I drag that over here into the middle. There's no means for me to enlarge that screen, I'm afraid. But here it defaults to trying to create the new chart of new accounting year, but that's what we're going to want to do. But notice here, and it defaults to trying to copy the existing chart of accounts from 2014. We don't want to do that. We would change our radio button down here to create empty chart of accounts. Okay. And so if we want to start over, we would just simply choose create empty chart of accounts. It'll even allow you to say, okay, we don't want to use account numbers if you wish, albeit we would strongly recommend that you do. For the greatest amount of reporting flexibility, account numbers are really, really important. At least I think so. But then, if you have used the account numbers checked, here you can set up a different account definition for the next year if you want. Okay, I'm going to go, okay, well, next year we didn't have enough numbers in there, enough flexibility, so we're going to add, a pound, dot, pound, 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 dot, pound, pound, pound sign, or a structure here. And it shows us even the example down here at the very bottom, right here, under example. I think if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me correctly, we can have up to 12 digits in our account numbers with 11 separators. I'm pretty sure that's the limit on that. So really large, you can maybe build some pretty large account numbers if you really, really want them. Okay. But then simply once we were ready to do that, and again, notice here it is in February I'm doing this. Like, you can do this pretty much anytime you want. You simply click OK. It'll set up and it'll say, here's basically it's opening my chart of accounts wizard for me for 2015, ready for me to set up my brand new chart of accounts for 2015. If I close out of accounting and I log back in because I'm in the 2015 year, it's going to open right up to that setup chart of accounts wizard again. Okay, I can go up to my change to a different accounting year. So what am I missing here? Oh, it may not permit me to do this with this year. So it might require that I do have to get through the chart of accounts wizard in order for me to do this. I'm sorry, folks, my memory is failing me on here. This might be the case. I might have to at least get a basic structure of my chart of accounts entered before I can do that. But if this is where you're thinking you need to go, okay, and there's one more thing I want to discuss about this after this, is if we go to back to our website, churchwindows.com, and I'm not sure if folks are aware of this too. We have a wonderful blog page available on our website. If we go down the left side here to under here, support blog, right here, support blog under support. There's a reason why I'm showing this to you. Bear with me. Click on support blog, or you can type in churchwindows.com/blog. In my search for, there's lots of useful information here, folks. Really, take a look. It's got separated by module. There's documentations. There's movies here. There's all kinds of stuff. But if I type in sample and I click search, it should reveal an option for me for accounting sample chart of accounts. And here below when I click on that topic and I click the accounting sample chart of accounts, the smaller link, it actually opens a PDF file report with a sample chart of accounts that we provide for you. This can't be imported for you into Church Windows, but it is a sample that if you're needing some help or wondering what your chart of accounts may look like after it's done, it's right here. It's available 24/7 for you to look at, print, whatever you need to do with it. Okay, if you want to model yours after it, that's great. But as I tell folks that while no chart of accounts is exactly alike, yours will resemble this chart of accounts in some way, whether it's through the leading digits of the account type, or over on the accounts, the 1, 2, 3 for our leading digits, or the types of funds or accounts that are there, or assets as the case may be. Your chart of accounts will resemble this in some way, shape, or form. Okay. So Marla's telling me, yeah, the wizard is kind of cranky about changing years when there's no chart of accounts there. So what do? We go into restore data, and we're going to choose our my flash drive here, and we are going to drill down to my 2014 data, and we're going to simply click on Start Restore. And we're going to get that back to where we were, where I started today. So, sorry folks, it's tossing us out, but it doesn't take us that long to log back in. So I always suggest a lot of times on my calls, my support calls when I'm talking with folks and users about church windows and accounting specifically, is generally setting up the chart of accounts for a new year is a really strong response, and generally going to be one of the last things that I would probably recommend you consider. Not because it's not unreasonable. Lots of users do ultimately decide on that, but there might be an easier way to fix what we currently have. Okay, and drawing on that, finally, for our final topic here is, as opposed to setting up a new year to set up a brand new chart of accounts. Okay, set up new year like we did just now. Is to change the existing chart of accounts for what we currently have. And when we want to do that, we would go up to our Special Functions menu at the top, and right next to Manage Years, we see the option here labeled Account Number Structure. Right there. Hopefully everybody can see my poorly drawn arrow there. Okay. That when we click on that, let me get rid of my drawing tools or drawings here. Click on Change Account Number Structure. It opens up, and the very first thing it says is, dialog box pops up and says, while this screen is open, you will have exclusive access to editing accounts. Basically, it's saying no one else will be able to make changes to accounts while you're on this screen. I mean, almost for the most part, it's telling us we've kind of got exclusive access to accounting. Not entirely true, but if somebody else is trying to change accounts simultaneously, we won't be able to do that. Definitely, if you're going to be considering this, of course, it's strongly recommended that you make a backup before you do it. But simply, once you're here, notice it says there are quite a few things you can do while here at this Renumber Chart of Accounts wizard. So let me expand it again, get that a little bit larger here for folks to see that. Is right here at the top left, it says account number before renumbering, and then account number after renumbering. So if you're really not wanting to change like how many digits are in your account numbers, or if you're not wanting to disable use of account numbers, you're just wanting to change them. Right here, you just, here's the current number. You just click in the account number after renumbering here, and we just click in there and notice it's allowing us to change the account. So I can go, okay, 101 instead of 100. And then I just move down the list and continue the same process ad nauseum until all of my accounts are changed. Now, if I were to go up to, say, Huntington Bank Checking and try to change that to 105, and I try to click down on it, notice it changes it to red. That tells me that there is a conflict with the number, and it's already assigned elsewhere. All right, so you do have to pay attention to those. It will not allow you to save your changes to your chart of accounts while there's anything that's appearing in red in that account number after renumbering list. More than likely, if you're in a position where you really need to use your account number, change account number structure to renumber a large amount of accounts, having your backup made beforehand is important. But hopefully this stuff will have been dealt with. Like you'll have like I said, we started the webinar with was printing out your list chart of accounts reports that just shows your current names and numbers of your accounts, and maybe in either another spreadsheet program or in a margin or next to those, you'll have the new numbers with their new numbers and names written in the margin, and you can just literally go down the list and change these accounts as needed. Again, but it won't allow us to save. If I click Save here, notice it says, Chart of Accounts contains accounts with duplicate or unentered account numbers, which must be resolved before saving. These accounts are highlighted in red. There we go. So it tells us exactly what we need to see, okay? Or what we need to do, as the case may be. Oh, okay, great. So I just come up here, I edit my Huntington Bank Checking to, 104, say, and now the red line goes away. It literally is that easy, just going down the list and, entering the number. Again, just like entering a brand new chart of accounts, generally this is going to be better dealt with if you started out and got your changes down or have your changes down on paper somewhere. You're not just doing it, just kind of hit or miss to see if the numbers will take or not. okay? Again, this is pretty straightforward. And again, this is just going to change the account numbers if I change them for the accounting year that I'm in this case 2014 only. It's not going to go back and change any other accounting years. And that's true for any of the other things I'm going to show you about this change structure or renumber chart of accounts screen. Okay. If you're in a position where you do need to change the number or structure of your accounts, again, you don't need to you don't need to start over with a brand new chart of accounts for the new year in order to even change the number of account numbers or numbers that we have in our account numbers, number of digits as the case may be. Oh yeah, and Marla's pointing out that I should probably discuss the significance of account numbers or not, as the case may be, in terms of subtotals, determining the order in which they appear in reports, for example, not the account number. That's a good point. We can set up the chart of accounts in such a way where there aren't account numbers that we use. I personally really rely on them. Other users don't. But without the account numbers, the names of your accounts become really critical and important. Again, won't let us have two account numbers with the same name. Okay. But the account numbers will help determine the order of your accounts, not only on the chart of accounts, but within the respective subtotals that you construct. And so if you have both account number and account name on the report, and I'm going to show you this here momentarily in just a couple minutes, is if account number and account name are displayed on the report, it automatically sorts the accounts by account number. But if you omit the column called account number, it will sort the accounts alphabetically by name. It's that easy. We'll look at that here in a minute. Before we go over and do that, though, there are definitely other things you can do with this change account number structure or renumber chart of accounts window. We go, okay, well, we want to change how many digits we have in our account numbers. So again, I'm strongly recommending backing up, but up here in the upper right, notice we've got this button labeled Change Structure. If I click on that, it opens up a little window and says, okay, am I disabling account numbers? You can uncheck that using account numbers if you want to disable them. Or right here is where we would change our account number structure itself. Now this is important because if I click, say, take one digit off of my account numbers, shortening the account numbers essentially, and I click OK, notice what happens. All kinds of accounts in red. It basically lops off that trailing digit on each of those accounts and introducing the greater possibility that I have duplicate accounts. Where that's really important for you to understand is especially if you've got things like sub-accounts. So notice here I've got a bunch of expense accounts here that have that, but notice if I drill down even into my sub-accounts, I've got conflicts. Okay? So you really, really have to be careful, especially when dealing with shortening accounts. Okay? At that point, depending on how many digits you're wanting to take off, how many or remove from the account numbers, how many accounts it's affecting when those change, okay, it might be simpler and easier to go in and simply enter a brand new chart of accounts. Okay, really you have to weigh these pros and cons when making these kinds of decisions. Okay, adding digits to your account numbers definitely not so much in play because it adds on trailing digits, and so generally there's little or no conflicts on those. There's simply not. So if I don't click save here, it wouldn't let me save it. So I click cancel, it then just resets it back to the original structure. So if I go to change structure again and I say, okay, I want to add a digit to my account numbers, okay, and again, and I click OK, notice it just adds and makes my number before 6 digits, my number after. Didn't change my placeholders, albeit I can if I want to, the decimals essentially. But it doesn't give me any conflicts on those. It's just adding a trailing zero to all of my accounts. So notice no conflicts whatsoever. And really, finally, the most important thing to keep in mind about the change or renumber chart of accounts or change account number structure window is nothing is saved here until you click save up here at the top. Okay. That is frequently overlooked, okay? You must click save in order for it to save your changes. And I always mention that on my calls is, folks, again, if you feel like you're at a point where you've kind of lost your objectivity about the chart of accounts and you're not sure that, what you're seeing is there is acceptable or good, honestly, we're happy to look at it for you. I don't know. I'm not familiar with your chart of accounts. None of my other accounting technicians are. I'll look at it. I'm not personally involved with it, so I'll give you an objective opinion on it, okay? At least as best I can, okay? And I always like to tell folks there's generally always something salvageable about virtually every chart of accounts, okay? I mean, things have to be really bad and dire, and that's fine. I'm not disputing that it doesn't occur, but generally we would probably try to encourage you to examine all of your other possibilities, again, depending on how much work is involved, okay? It's really a matter of personal choice. I mean, because when you're dealing with setting up a brand new chart of accounts, I mean, we haven't even really talked about this per se either, is, what about like cross-year comparisons? Okay, well, we have this wonderful feature that if we change our accounts, we may have to go up to this after we've entered a brand new, even when you enter a brand new chart of accounts or you change them, if you use like previous years columns on your reports, like under your under your, say, treasurer's report, for example, there's a column called previous year. That we have to make sure the accounts are in sync so the system knows, okay, this new number in the current year is represented by a different number, in the old year. And that's where then, again, this is more of what happens the more of the changes we make to the chart of accounts. Even if you change a couple of accounts, you'll probably have to do this. Is that when we go up to manage accounts, notice here at the very top, go up to the top here. Whoops, I'm getting my drawing tool here. Sorry to steer some focus for you folks. Right up here, match accounts. I worked with a user with matching accounts earlier today. If you change accounts, the system doesn't automatically directly correlate those accounts from one year to the next when either the accounts change position or the numbers change. So you have to come into this match accounts function, click on that, and notice here in the top left you've got unmatched accounts and matched accounts. So we don't have any here. But if you change numbers, you're going to have, here's the number that's disconnected from 13, and here are numbers that are disconnected or unmatched in 14. You have to simply highlight the particular accounts and click match in the center. So, it's really important when dealing with things like balance sheet accounts, and definitely for income and expenses when dealing with previous year. So again, even if you go through the process of entering an entirely brand new chart of accounts, but you want annual or multiple or cross-year comparisons, you'll still have work to do to come in here and match these accounts in the old year to the new year. Okay, so there's work to be done. Again, I encourage the path of least resistance if and at all and wherever possible. Okay. So just to sort of address what Marla was talking about before about account numbers, if we go to something like our treasurer's report, okay, and just to kind of bring in more flexibility, we have both our account number and account name. Entering a new chart of accounts or changing the accounts themselves will warrant working and fixing your subtotals too. So there's not a little work. The more work we do to change the chart of accounts, the more work there is to actually get it back to where we want it to be. So there's all kinds of things to consider and weigh when dealing with that. So here, notice we've got our general fund income accounts, which are all numerically ordered, 100 through 275, 300. And again, that's because the account number is added. But if I choose account name, if I'm not mistaken, that's going to now change that. And notice they are changed to sorting it alphabetically. So flower comes before general ties comes before interest, etc. So the account numbers, again, offer a greater level of reporting flexibility. So we strongly recommend using account numbers. Okay. So that is really what I mean, I hope that was enough detail, I think, on that. I don't want to over describe it for us if possible. So, if you have more questions, folks, after the webinar is concluded, please don't hesitate to give us a holler, give us a call. I'm happy to discuss it with any of you, as are any of our other accounting technicians. Okay. Again, I'm happy to offer a chart of accounts review for you in terms of what I see, if there's anything glaring around there. But just be prepared that if you get me your chart of accounts and you ask me to review it and you're thinking about making some changes to it, the first thing I'm going to ask is, what isn't working? That's such an important question. What isn't working? What are your folks not getting on their reports? What is failing in the system for the current chart of accounts? Then once we know what isn't working, then we have someplace we can go. And it could be as simple as relinking income and expenses. It could be as simple as just changing a handful of account numbers. It could be as simple as adding a few accounts or funds, as the case may be, and relinking. Okay, but ultimately it could also boil down to either going to your renumber chart of accounts routine and starting over fresh, or again at the change of a new year, starting over with a brand new, entirely different, brand new chart of accounts. So lots of flexibility. So that's all I got, folks. And it is just a couple minutes before 3. I hope it's been helpful, or we hope it's been helpful. We're not going to end the webinar, like I said, right away. So, if folks have to dart out, by all means, go up to your file menu on the little control panel there, choose exit, leave webinar, and it'll exit you out of the webinar. Thank you so much if you have to go. If not, then we'll be sticking around and seeing what we can't do to get all of your questions answered. But thank you so much. Hope it's been helpful.